And if you're not familiar with this game so far, this is a competitive game where players are marooned on a deserted island and they're forced to live off the land in order to survive. And they're also being hunted by territorial dinosaurs because this is a island that has gone undiscovered over the years, and it just so happens that on this island the dinosaurs have continued to survive. This game's going to tell the story of the players as those survivors as they try to build up a civilization in this hostile land over the series of these 4 chapters. And of course, the decisions and successes and failures are going to be affecting the story as it unfolds. Players are going to be competing to amass the most followers within their society, but it also might be mutually beneficial to work together at times in order to fight back against the overwhelming dinosaur presence and the dangers of the island. And if that isn't cool enough already, I think it's really impressive that this game is able to tell all that story over these 4 episodes, with each episode giving you a very different gameplay experience that is thematic to that point in the story. And there will be some shared mechanisms that will make each game feel a little bit more familiar and like you're not playing a completely different game. But there will be enough changes between them with some different boards and mechanisms to keep things fresh and force players to use some different strategies. And for all of you out there looking for an impressive game that has just a little bit more crunch, this one is a great contender for pick of the week. In the first episode, players are going to be struggling to survive as they build up a shelter and settlement on the outer perimeter of the island. Players are going to be confined to the area that they crashed with their ship because it's just too dangerous to venture any further into the island, so you're going to be trying to build up your settlement on that beach. The main board is going to represent the area where players are building up their settlement. It's going to be broken out into 4 different lanes, each with their own actions for players to perform, but then each of these lanes can also be individually attacked by dinos. The main mechanism in this episode is going to be dice worker placement, where players are each going to have dice of their color, but then neutral white dice that they're going to be issuing out on the board to perform various actions. But then if you can also get a majority of your colored dice in certain areas, that will also give you additional benefits. The different actions will allow players to do things like gain food and resources that they can spend for other actions like recruiting and upgrading units, sending those units out on patrol cards, which essentially take those units out of the game for a varying length of time, but have different costs and benefits when they are completed. Players can also use actions and resources to build their shelters for different bonuses, or even build fortifications on the edge of the forest to hold those dinos back, and also gives the players more options to deploy units for defense when those dinos do attack. And like I said, players are trying to get as many dice of their color out on the board as possible, so there is also an action for players to convert their neutral white dice into a die of their color, giving them more options for area control when they do put those dice out on the board. The value of the die that you're placing out on the board is going to determine the options that you have available to you when you're placing it, and also some of the actions and placement locations will attract dinosaurs to that region of the board, populating the top portion of the board by the forest, and once that's completely full, that's going to be triggering a dinosaur attack. Any units that players have deployed to defend that area of the board are then going to be fighting back against those dinos, and depending on their strength and the strength of the dinos that accumulated there, that's going to determine their overall success, but players are going to be earning different benefits and followers depending on their contributions. Of course, any of the dinosaurs that do make it through are going to be eating your inhabitants and destroying parts of your settlement. Once the players have placed their dice, they'll also have the option to place their leader miniature anywhere they want out on the board in order to take that action for free, or instead they can choose to put some influence tokens on one of these officer cards that will gain them a certain benefit once that officer card has been completely filled, but then also it can gain you a majority bonus at the end of each round. At the end of each round, each lane's also going to be scored according to whichever player has the majority of their colored dice in those lanes, and then all the players are going to be getting their dice back, and the game continues like this until players progress the story to move on to the next episode. And in episode 2, players have established the walls around their city, creating a safe place for their inhabitants to stay. But of course, they still aren't self-sufficient, and players are going to have to send out patrols deeper into the forest in order to bring back different resources. This brings in some brand new elements like the forest board, as well as the upgraded settlement board that's going to introduce some new actions like visiting the market where you can buy and trade different items, or even perform the adventure action that allows you to go out and explore the forest, clear different areas of dinos, and also build up camps, outposts, and watchtowers, and then defend those camps against dinosaur attacks. Players will also be able to discover different relics and uncover more that the island has to offer as they explore out deeper and deeper into the island. Fending off any dinosaurs will still give you rewards like it did in the previous episode, but now players also have the option to capture dinosaurs as well, which essentially allows players to use that dino as a resource to perform some special actions in this episode of the game. In episode 3, the settlement has found some peace as it's now safe from dinosaur attacks and has grown into a bustling city. Players have not only become proficient at fighting against these dinosaurs, but they have also figured out how to tame and ride these dinos. This now allows them to venture even further into the forest, while also having additional protection in addition to their troops in order to fight against anything that they might encounter. Of course, the island's full of mystery, and players will be able to visit different locations to either discover ancient relics for unique bonuses and effects, or instead they can choose to establish their force in that area for area majority for victory points at the end of the episode. And not only will players be able to go out and explore more of the island, but there's also more to explore here within the settlement as well, because each player now has their own individual player board representing the area that they control within the settlement, and players will be able to use the dinos that they collect basically as construction equipment in order to build that settlement up, till the land and build a little bit of a ranch, and this essentially acts as an engine building mechanism because players will be able to add more and more to their boards, and then as a secondary action on their turn, instead of adding influence to one of those officer cards, they can instead activate one row of their ranch, gaining the benefits that that row has to offer. And if you thought that all that peacefulness in episode 3 was just a little too good to be true, well, you'd be absolutely right, because in episode 4, your presence has attracted the attention of the ancient beasts that have been hidden on the island and in the ocean around it. And this might be the most dangerous episode of all, but it's also the most epic because everything is on a grander scale. Players have built up their settlement and have reaped the rewards of the island, but now your threats are also getting bigger as well. Players are going to have to decide how they want to split up their efforts, if it's worth fighting back and trying to protect your land on this island, or if you want to put those efforts into building up your new ship and train the appropriate crew to maybe make it back to mainland civilization. Either option takes time, and players are going to have to make a lot of sacrifices to accomplish either of these feats, and players are going to be repurposing their ranches to prop up the main city that is now in dire need. Players are going to be moving up different contribution tracks depending on their contributions to the efforts, which will score them victory points for this portion of the game. Players can also complete both land and sea adventures to gain access to new rewards, but then it also determines the endgame scoring conditions. Players are going to be pushed into a corner by these ancient beasts, making it very difficult to gather new resources and making it very difficult to protect every aspect of your settlement. This means that it might be better to let those establishments go and uproot them for whatever resources you can scavenge from them and divert those to other efforts within your walls. There's not a whole lot more info on how episode 4 plays at the time of me filming this video, but that'll give you a general idea of what you can expect. And if you do want to learn more, there will be more revealed during the campaign, and of course I will have that linked in the description below. And if you are interested in this one, I do recommend checking it out, especially if you're into a game with a little bit more crunch, and you can find a link to this campaign in the description below.